Hello and welcome to episode 23 of Seddon and Laceys Comic Stash. That there is Seddon. I did it first time.
You did. You did. Have you been practicing? Have you been sitting at home all day pointing?
I've been remembering it's the opposite side. Opposite side.
Oh yeah, it is as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why didn't I trick that before? We've got this. We can bring this to the Friday show and impress everyone that we can point now.
So this week we are going way back.
It's like we've found kind of a time machine, and we're going to jump into that time machine to. I was going to say the dawn of time. That's a bit of an exaggeration, isn't it? But the dawn of time for some of the biggest characters out there in comics, I guess.
We are going back pre-World War II to the times of the Great Depression.
Timely, just as World War III is about to start, although we're recording this and World War III might happen by the time this releases, so
we are looking at Action Comics number 1, The Birth of Superman, Detectives Comics 17, The Birth
27.
of 27,
Yeah.
The Birth of Batman, and Sensational Comics, The Birth of Wonder Woman.
And I mean, we'll pick this up in it. The only thing I wasn't sure of, and research king that I wasn't sure if Wonder Woman had made appearances anywhere else at this point, because I feel like it was the first one, but also it was the only one that was slightly dubious on as to whether, like, I don't know, she might have been in a Sunday strip or something like that. But as I say, didn't bother to research it. So as far as I'm concerned, you ain't going to get much older than this, and it probably isn't in print anywhere. So as far as I'm concerned, the birth of Wonder Woman.
Yes. But before we go old school, Seddon.
Yes.
What have you been doing in your reading corner?
Because I've dipped into this world of Kindle Unlimited, I've been given this bountiful amount of comics that I've never read before to enjoy for the first time. However, what I keep doing is I keep going back and reading stuff that I've read before or that I already own. And the only thing I actually touched on this week, sort of between other than our reading for this show, was New Avengers, and it was Volume 1, which is available on Kindle Unlimited, which is Breakout. Now, this is written by Brian Michael Bendis, and I think on a previous show we touched on briefly about I think it was when we were doing Hawkeye. We touched briefly on Brian Michael Bendis being given the Avengers as a franchise, and almost said, "Do what you will, make the magic happen." And he did a story called Avengers Disassembled, which is basically the breakdown of the Avengers team that it was to get them into place for his reboot. Now, what I actually thought I'd downloaded was that, but I just clicked on the wrong one, so I actually got Breakout instead. But yeah, I mean, this was quite a transcendent moment, I guess, for the Avengers. The Avengers had been an overlooked toy in the Marvel cupboard for a long time. What I've said before, I love the Avengers. Even when they've been shit, I love them. There's something about them. But the X-Men had dominated for decades and decades and decades, and this was a chance to reinvigorate it. And in comes Brian Michael Bendis, as I say, disassembles the team, comes back with what is known as New Avengers Number One, as it was released then, and we see a cast of relatively new Avengers. And when I say relatively new Avengers, you've still got your Caps and your Iron Man of this world, but all of a sudden, coming into the Avengers world is Wolverine and Spider-Man, people who haven't been Avengers before, but are very big top tier characters. And I think that was really kind of, I guess, his starting point. His premise was to go, I would like to bring in some of those big names, and also that the guy clearly has a love for 1970s characters. So you see people like Luke Cage, who had been not really dealt with very well since the 70s, and some can argue not so well in the 70s either. But he kind of introduces these. But it's all around this premise of there's a breakout, there's a mass breakout from prison, and the Avengers don't exist at this point, but these disparate heroes turn up to help with the breakout, and then subsequently help to try and track down the villains that escape, and that is how the new Avengers are birthed. It is really good. I think without Bendis doing this, I'm dubious that the Marvel Cinematic Universe exists. I think this put a lot of attention onto the Avengers, so that when they started to talk about what should we make into movies, they went, "Oh, well, the Avengers is getting a little bit popular in the comic book world now." And also, don't get me wrong, the fact that they'd sold Spider-Man, X-Men, and Fantastic Four out probably also predicated on that. But I think it really was what gave them the faith to go, shall we invest in the Avengers? And yeah, from there, a legend is born, and the company becomes buoyant off the back end of this. Weirdly enough, we haven't seen this rendition of the Avengers in the movies because they didn't have Wolverine, and Spider-Man obviously joins in later. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's not something where you might not see something close to an iteration of this somewhere down the line, or that the movies might meander into a world where they go, let's break the Avengers down to nothing and let's get some new Avengers in. But yeah, really good read. And again, especially if you're an Avengers fan, changes things quite a lot, moves it forward, puts them in prominence. And David Finch does the art, and he is a very good artist. And I think he particularly shines on this because he's given the keys to a bus he didn't have before. So yeah, good stuff. Although not the one I was going to read, but good stuff anyway.
So yeah, my reading corner, very much reading what we needed to for the show because as you said earlier, life, work, and everything else comes in the way. I did do another chapter of Nightfall 2. I will save my opinions on it. Let's just say this may take a while to read.
Okay. Oh, I think
read into that what you will. But
I think to be honest, I think I will crack into a bit of that over the coming week, because it feels like something that if I don't start it, it almost becomes a demon, doesn't it? Of going, oh my god. But yeah, so I think that's gonna jump to the top of the reading pile ish if I don't start reading stuff I've already read before again.
I think with this, I think my battle plan for this is to attempt to at least do a chunk every week.
Yeah,
I don't think I can sit there and do the whole thing like I did with the first one.
Yeah,
because with the first one, I sat there and that was the only thing I was reading at the time.
Well, it's hard. I think I said to you last episode, I'd started to read this Black Panther run again, which again the complete collection was available on Kindle Unlimited, and that one I kind of put on the back burner a little bit because I'm enjoying it so much. It's almost like I know that it's finite, and I almost don't want to burn through it too quickly. Whereas Nightfall, it's a bit the other way of going, I don't know if I'm going to enjoy it, and I don't want to burn through it and burn myself out. We've had a really good run, haven't we? I mean, I know there was a couple of things in the reading corner last week of the freebies that you tried that weren't so great, but let's be honest, we've been somewhat by design, but we've been blessed really by picking stuff out that we really like or that we have really liked. So yeah, I almost don't want to end that run. Not saying that Nightfall will be the end, but I feel like it might be the closest thing to getting to an end point for that for a while.
Well, it's the thing is like I will say now it's a slow start. Hopefully it will pick up, and then I will get to a point where I'm just smashing through it because I'm enjoying it.
Well, it's odd, isn't it? Because when we left the story, it was actually quite speedy at that point, wasn't it? We had what I think when we discussed it, what we felt was probably the point where maybe you end the story, but they stuff the next 3 or 4 issues, 5 maybe, in at the end, and that's belting along at a bit of a pace. So yeah, to then come back and kind of go, it slows down. It'll be fine. It'll be great.
We'll do it.
It'd be great.
It's a behemoth.
It can't. Yeah. We'll get there by hook or by crook. We'll get there.
So, into the topic of
Chris. Before we get into that, there seems to be something happening, mate. There seems to be some sort of timey-wimey thing happening. I think I'm losing you. I think I'm losing you. And somehow, We seem to have transported back into a different backdrop, possibly a backdrop from a different time where there are things such as old silent movie intros in the background and spotlights. And what are these crazy madcap comics down here that seem to be presenting themselves in front of us? There's production values for you. PS. If I don't splice a timey-wimey thing in, that's going to sound fucking stupid, but let's hope I do.
Yes, we are back in the oldie days.
And by the way, I've switched sides as well, so fuck you in learning which way to point. Damn it! Oh, I swore. My apologies.
So yes, we are going old school, and we should start with the first, with with Superman number one.
And I think I know we said it earlier, but I think it's worth repeating that all of these are currently available for free reads, aren't they, on Prime Reading? Yes. Let's say one of the reasons why we're reading them because they were free, but also it felt like a reasonable experiment because we said in previous episodes, as much as I've read comics for years, I've actually never gone back and read these. You know, I've heard of them, I've seen panels from them, but I never have gone back. So this was a really interesting experiment from that side as to what the hell were comics back like there and like back then, and can we almost see why these characters from these earliest of appearances, why they become the juggernauts in comic books and multimedia that they actually do. And yes, our first one, as we say, was Spider-Man, but a Spider-Man Superman, because I think it's honest to say, like, and we've covered this before, not a character that generally vibes with either of us that much. And maybe a 1930s version of him might vibe with us a little bit better.
So, not going to run through the story as such. Give a brief sort of overview of it. Starts with the Krypton planet blowing up.
Yes.
The rocket coming down and Clark, Superman being picked up by the Kents.
An elderly couple, as they're called, rather than the Kents. Just a random elderly couple find them.
Yeah. Gets binned off to an orphanage. He's too strong, causes an issue, comes out because they miss him.
It's strange that's kind of like some of the things that really stood out for us, and I think it's going to stand out through all of these. And if you see me looking down, it's because I've got it here to remind me of bits and bobs, because ostensibly, like, kind of that origin hasn't dramatically changed over the years in theory. You know, a rocket coming from a dying planet, found by a couple. But you do get interesting wrinkles. Things such as, and you mentioned orphanage, orphan asylum, as they call it here. And you get to see a tiny baby Superman lifting up like a chest of drawers. And then the people who work there are a bit like, oh, fucking hell. We don't want this kid. And then the Kents, or the elderly couple as they're known in this, turn up and kind of go, oh, we regret putting him in here. Can we have him back? And the guy behind the counter literally is kind of, yeah, of course you can. Lads, get him. Get rid of that weird kid. But yeah, so some real kind of weird, odd discrepancies there. Where and again, this is all page one, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, like, you look at how comics origins are done now. This is like 5 issues to do this story, and I mean, it's Segan and Schuster who do it, and they do all of that on page one. And like, kind of the panel there that page one ends with, like them just kind of going, "Oh, you're a good kid, aren't you?" And I think that's that bit that's supposed to tell us they instilled morals into him, but it's done in a very quick fashion of going, "Oh yeah, you're right."
And then he then goes to get a job as a reporter.
We get the old school, because he's not flying. I think that's something that's worth pointing out.
That was something I was going to bring up in a bit, was that he doesn't fly in this.
Yeah, well, they give you a nice little rundown of his powers, don't they? They kind of have a page where they go, he can leap this, he can run as fast as a train, he can lift a car and all this sort of thing. And then, sorry, I know I shouldn't laugh at this bit, but they're doing this page where they run down his powers, and then there's just a panel that says, and his parents died, and you just see him at a grace, and then they just move on, like, no kind of like pomp and circumstance about it. It's like, and his parents are dead. Like,
done.
Amazing.
Off we go.
Yeah.
So yeah, goes and gets the job. I don't think it's not called the Daily Planet at that point, no, is it? The paper.
No, it's the Daily Star, and for the UK watchers, they'll be quite surprised at the fact that Superman used to work at the boob fest that was Daily Star, known for its great headline work. Lois and Clark wouldn't have been such fine journalists if they really worked for the Daily Star in this country.
He gets told that there's no job, so he overhears.
He does. He gets a bit creepy, doesn't he?
A riot, or there's something going on at prison, so he goes there, fights them, so he can get the story.
Well,
and the job.
I actually stopped at this point to turn to Andrea and say, "Oh wow! Like the first thing Superman does as a superhero is he stops a lynching." Because there is a panel there where they're actually throwing a noose over a tree to lynch a prisoner, aren't they? It's quite dramatically different times.
I'm going to call a lynching.
Yep, dramatically different times where, like, your peril is someone might get lynched.
Thankfully, they were lynching a white man.
Yes, and again, I'm with you on that because when I saw the word lynching, I'm just thinking, oh god, is this going to be so problematic we can't cover it in the episode?
Yeah. He sorts all that out. We find out that there is a woman that's also on trial for this murder.
Yeah, she's going to face the rather than being lynched, she's facing the electric chair that night, isn't it? So clearly in this world, if you're a man, prison. If you're a woman, electric chair.
He finds out that the person that was murdered was actually murdered by some singer.
Yes.
Who a little bit of violence towards a woman there.
Oh yeah. Like Superman, he's not shying away. I mean, she pulls after trying very ineptly to seduce him by pretty much going, "Do you fancy some of this?" And Superman going, "No." She pulls out a gun. He crushes it and then grabs her by the arm and says, "I'll do the same to your arm as I did to that gun."
Yeah.
This is not the Superman I'm used to.
And then just hog ties her to the tree of the governor's house.
Yeah.
Breaks in the door to get in. Then the governor's guard tries to stop him, so he scraps with him.
Was he the guard? Was he the butler? Or was this really progressive? This is the governor's fella who lives in the house.
I think it was the hired help or a guard of some description.
Yeah.
And then he gives him the big, "Oh, you won't get into this door. It's steel."
And again, amazing. Like, who has a steel door? And I know, like, obviously the idea was to show that he's strong, but unless you've got a panic room in your house, which I'm pretty sure they probably weren't having many of in the 30s, no one has a steel door in their bedroom, do they?
No. So smashes through the door, manages with minutes to spare to convince the governor to
pardon the electric chair lady. Yeah.
And tells him that the real culprit is tied to in the garden.
Yes, yeah, he does, doesn't he? He literally kind of goes, "Yeah, I've left the real one in the garden. You sort that out. I'm off."
Yeah. Then he goes out with Lois.
Yes, he does. I'm laughing already.
Dancing club, where basically some mobsters look at Lois as meat and go, "No, she's now mine. I want to go." Clark lets them.
Because he is, for those who know Clark later on, he is trying to portray the Clark persona as meek, mild-mannered, weak, and not looking for a confrontation whatsoever. And I found Lois to be quite harsh here. Now, admittedly, like, he's not defending her honour or stopping these bad lads from doing it. But she pretty much just goes, "You're a wiener, mate. I want naught to do with you. I'm getting a taxi home."
So we then see a car chase where the twats from the club get Lois and basically are going to run the train on her by the looks of it.
It's we've run the taxi off the road. God knows what happens to the taxi driver, never mentioned again. They stick her in the back of the car And then, I guess, yes, while they're on their way to do whatever it was they were going to do to it, they spend a lot of time going, I wish we'd beat the shit out of that fella she was with and all.
Yeah. And then Superman turns up and basically picks the car up, smashes it up, beats down the thugs, takes Lois home, and that's pretty much the end of the
And
inaugural.
I just want to clarify when we say takes Lois home, not in the kind of more modern sense. He does just take her home and drop her off, doesn't he? It's not like
Yeah.
he's not getting that Superman credit. I mean, in and around this bit, you get like kind of, I said it's in panels before. You get iconic panels with, like, for example, Superman picking up the car, don't you? And
Yeah.
I think comparatively, there's not really probably anything else out there that's doing that sort of thing at the time, isn't it? This is your first Superman as it is. But I don't know. I mean, I think it was almost odd to go back and see those panels in their rawest form, because you go, we're spoilt by, I guess, what we've seen later, because I don't know whether even a kid me would have picked this up and gone, wow. But it is, as I say, it's hard contextually because of the time that it was written in. But yeah, I mean, like for Superman's coming out party, let's say, we find out that he has like a range of powers, and he is pretty handy at everything, but he's turning. I mean, there's a bit, isn't there, around getting the job where I think you could almost argue like he's manufacturing stories to get the job.
Yeah.
But I guess you can also argue the other side of going, but then he actually wants the job to do good things. But it feels like a bit of a somewhat odd and sinister way to go about it, isn't it? Like it's almost like, well, I need cash, so I'll save people just so I can get a story out of it.
Yeah. I said, obviously it's of its time. The lynching, the wife beater bit that I missed out, and the women have no decision on what's going to happen.
Sorry.
If I want to have a go on her, I will.
You saying that, I had actually forgotten the wife beater plot line. So when he's in the newsroom listing it out for things to go and help with, it's a call that comes in, doesn't it? And it's like there's a wife beater on Station Avenue. And he goes, and it is just someone knocking 10 bells of shite out of his wife, isn't it?
With a belt, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what he kind of steps in. And good on him. He takes care of it. He stops them. But yeah, you are right. It's crimes of the time, I guess. There's no Lex Luthor here. There's no Brainiac. There's nothing like that. This is dealing with. I mean, he doesn't have the godlike powers that he ends up ultimately having, does he? But he is pretty powerful. But yes, he is ostensibly using that to take out low-level street thugs. The sort of people you'd see in Daredevil rather than Superman, generally.
Yeah. Is it me, or does he come across as a bit of a cunt?
I thought that. I thought he's like, and maybe because of like the amount of panels, this isn't a long story, and maybe because of, again, the storytelling techniques at the time, but there's little kind of hints to stuff that I guess we see much later, which is the impact that the Kents have, giving him a moral code, making him a good guy rather than like wanting to go around and use his powers for bad. But they are only really soft hints, and in general, yes, he is. I would describe him as quite a burly fella, isn't he? Like he doesn't take any shit.
No.
And he just kind of stumbles into situations and kind of goes, well, I'm going to beat the living shit out of them. Like there's no holding back with him. He's knocking these guys around like it's going out of fashion. But yeah, not the fleshed out truth and justice American loving hero that we potentially see in later formats. Yeah, I'm surprised when I said about he takes Lois home, but not in the way that modern people would. I actually thought it was going to go that way. That's the kind of character I thought they were portraying in this, where he's going to go, well, doesn't fancy me as Clark, but as Superman, might as well. But yeah, it's odd. What did you think of the art?
It's hard with that because we are so used to what we have now,
Yeah,
where it is amazing. You know, the art comic book art has gone so far
yeah,
in the what 80, 90 years that
yeah,
it's
yeah. I
been.
mean, we're looking at 80 plus years for these being produced. Yeah.
You know, so for its time, because obviously I sent some stuff over to you
Yes.
yesterday
Yeah.
of sort of bits from other stuff from 30s comics and sort of depictions and stuff, and I can see why this went off shelves. I don't think a
Yeah.
lot of stuff was in color in them days.
Yeah. It was funny you should say the color because that was one of the things that I thought was very different panel to panel. The coloring. So I think in some panels, and much like the cover that is down just under Chris, I think when they were not putting a lot of colour into the panels, so they were sticking very much to the red, the blue, the yellows. I thought it helped the art, whereas. And not that I want to hold them back, but there were lots of scenes where they kind of added a lot of black shading and shadowing in, and probably like for me, it just felt like they added too much in to the point
Mm.
where it almost looked like it was a different character. It was like a kind of the Star Trek reverse universe, dressed in black, put a beard on him version had appeared all
Yeah.
of a sudden because distinctly different costumes because there was so much black used on the page.
One thing I will say about the visuals is the wording and the font that they
Yeah,
use. Some bits are really bloody hard to
I
read. I
I
had to
wasn't.
magnify because I was doing obviously reading it digitally.
Yeah,
I had to magnify the screen like to 150, 170% zoom
not to give like any
to
spoilers away
read it.
for the next two, but I found it at its worst in this, and I did
Yeah.
wonder whether maybe it was not a good reproduction of it as well. But yeah, certainly the font and the size of it, yes, it was very much like. Are those letters, or am I supposed to just be like seeing, I don't know, exclamation marks or something like that? Because it's so small, it could just be scratches on the page. But yeah, I wasn't sure whether that was yeah, like the one they scanned from maybe wasn't so good, but yes, it really did kind of falter out. Do you know, like some of the better bits of the art for me was when they were drawing Clark and people like Lois when they were actually drawing humans in their human daily. I thought it looked
Yeah.
better. You know, they draw a snappy suit more than they necessarily drew. But I guess at that stage they've been used to drawing kind of crime and gangster comics a lot, so they were more inclined to do it that way. But yeah, like yeah, a strange old beast. And as I say, like one of the things that was nice for me was to see that some of that origin stuff was there. You know, like
Yeah.
from this first appearance, the idea that he come from Krypton and that the Kents, although never mentioned as the Kents, are, are there in his life. So I feel like later writers come along and worked with the source material and fleshed it out more than one page.
Yeah.
And I thought that was quite good. And I do wonder. I mean, that's one of the things that I thought might have pulled me in as a kid in the 30s of kind of going, wow, not only has this guy got powers, but there's some mystery here. We know he's we know he's an alien. Like, where did he really come from, and things like that. So I think there's enough nuggets in here, even beyond just kind of the hero worship. And in fact, I would say that maybe the origin has been iterated on so much now
Mm.
that weakens it a little bit. But my God, poor Kent. I'm coming back to it. 3 panels and dead. You know, and again, just dead. Dead on a page where they're explaining his power set.
Yeah.
He can
Um,
run as fast as a train, and his parents died.
yeah.
That's kind of how it's delivered to you.
Yeah. So obviously the version that we've read does have another. I think it's another 4 issues
Yeah, because this one on
as
Prime
part of it.
Reading is like a trade, isn't it? So it has sort of the further adventures of, whereas the other two are just literally like well the story in the issue. Because with Detective, I'm sure there was more to that issue than like kind of the Batman one. But so there, yeah,
Yeah.
there is more available on Prime Reading. Are you going to read more?
I am semi-tempted to have a look to see if he stays that level of cunt.
I'm thinking about finishing this one because
Yeah.
I kind of have a um, I want to see whether even in these first few issues whether everything kind of stays the same, as you say, like whether personality wise he stays the same and whether they actually are just a series of stories. So it'll be the peril of the week, the gangster of the week, or whatever, and it focuses on his powers, or whether even at these early stages they try and flesh out character at all. Because I just don't know what they were doing in the 30s and early 40s for expanding on it. Was it just eight pages of hurrah, the good guy wins, or do we start to see some of those seeds of what happens years later? So I think I will probably finish this one off, although I guess I might quit partway through if the next few are balls.
Yeah. As I said, I wouldn't rush out to do it, but I'm intrigued enough, and it's free to finish it.
I think that's a true point on this, isn't it? I mean, if you said to me, would I recommend someone goes out and buys it? I'd probably say no. Even for that, well, no, unless they're buying the original issue and they're doing it for investment purposes. But
Yeah.
I think I wouldn't say this is it's interesting while it's free, but it's not compelling enough to kind of go go out there and seek this out. Go and buy this trade when it's not free on Prime Reading. I wouldn't push anyone towards that.
Yeah, I think it's one of those for us as
comic book historians,
in,
Chris.
in the way that we are, yes.
Yeah.
That it's one of those we have to do this. They were there, they were able to be read, so we have to read them just because it is the true origins of these. And the thing is, I will say it with all three of these is, would I go out of my way and sort of go to everyone you have to read them? No. But if you are a fan of the genre and want to see where it began, then get on these because these are free.
Yeah. And I mean, they were there, but I mean, let's be honest. I mean, DC call this their trinity of characters. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. They are their big three. But also, I guess the interesting side of it is looking at how what we now term as superhero characters, and I guess we might get into that a little bit more. Well, maybe when we get to Batman, even is what people were doing with superheroes back then, and it is dramatically different and a lot more violence towards women.
So next we will go into Sensation Comics.
Yes,
and our Wonder Woman debut. So with this one, we see Wonder Woman in the invisible jet.
Yeah. Do you know what? If you'd have asked me, I would have assumed that the invisible jet was something that was introduced to the story later. Yeah, that felt like something that was like probably in 50s, 60s, or even 70s. I was really surprised to see the invisible jet in
page
this.
One.
Yeah.
Obviously, the first page there is just this massive sort of blurb of who she is, how she's there, and what's going on.
They certainly deal. When I said about whether there'd been any sort of Sunday strips of her or anything like that, because that was one of the things that jumped out of me is they treat the origin very differently. And I'm not saying that Superman went into great depth, but at least it had 6 panels talking about it, whereas Wonder Woman just has a blurb top right in the middle of the screen, doesn't it, which says here's who she is, here's the people around her,
here's where she's from.
And like this guy called Steve Trevor turned up, fighting Nazis, got a concussion, go, and then the story just goes from there, doesn't it?
Yeah. So they are taking him to New York or Washington to hospital.
Yep.
You see
in an invisible jet, just to clarify, as long as we didn't hammer that home enough.
She parks it in a barn.
Love that bit. She went, like, so no one can find this. I'll put it in a barn. It's an invisible jet. No one will find it. It's invisible. That's the point.
this takes her to hospital, and then you see her wandering around Washington, I would imagine, a city.
Sorry, there's just a few bits of dialogue that I kind of love right in its early bits, and again, I mean, it's the writing at the time. But she drops him off at the hospital. So I've got it here, and she sort of just says, "This is Steve Trevor, captain in the army. Take care of him." And the doctor goes, "But wait, who are you?" And she just goes, "I'll send you a full report sometime. Bye," and runs away. Bye. So polite, bless her.
Yeah, and then you get when she's walking in the town, and you just get like all the weird comments from the normal people.
So when I said I stopped reading Superman when the lynching started to say to Andrea, this is the part where I stopped reading sensation comics to turn to Andrea, and you know, Wonder Woman is dressed very much like how. For those who have seen the Linda Carter one, which we talked about on the TV adaptations, and probably to a large degree, a similar costume to what she retains for years. In fact, you can see a bit of it down there. But it's just a couple of old women, isn't there? And one of them goes, "Well, she's practically naked," and the other one goes, "Yes, what a hussy." And I just loved it. I was just absolutely creasing. But then there's a fella next to me who kind of he's going, "Oh, hello." Oh, hello. Oh, hello. She looks nice.
I've seen some knee. Oh,
yeah.
Be still, my giddy heart.
And in context, I mean, like, and sometimes I thought these look like shorts, but it's a skirt. She's wearing a skirt. She's not even in her knickknacks. So, but yes, women of the day not pleased with Wonder Woman. Scandalous Wonder Woman.
Scantily clad. Then there's a bit where someone starts shooting at them. Oh, it's a robbery going on, isn't there?
Yeah. She just happens to be walking past a clothes shop, and then just down the road there's a armed robbery going on. Convenient.
And then she uses the magic bracelets to ka-ching-ching all the bullets.
Whilst thinking to herself, it's fun to be playing bullets and bracelets again. Yes, that's what it says. Yeah, bullets and bracelets.
And then we get the shyster that chases her down as she runs off after stopping the bad guys.
And you know how we said this, the page in Superman which establishes the powers. It says he can do this and he can do that. This was kind of a whole page dedicated to how fast she can run, because the guys in the car going, "Well, I'm doing 25. Well, I'm doing 30. Well, I'm doing 40." And 60, eventually,
80 miles an hour.
Yeah,
I must give it all the gas.
Yes, yeah.
Go on, all the horses. Then he sort of goes, "Well, you can either be in the racetrack running, or you can be on the stage as a pantomime."
We talk about like the sensibilities of what we know to be heroes, and like when he proposes this, and he's a shady fella, and he's like, "We can make money out of you," and she does kind of go, "Oh, well, I do need money, so yeah, let's go for it." So she's not tricked into this. She willingly goes, "No, I need some cash money. Yeah, I'll perform for money."
Yeah. So she starts doing the stage show with her bullets and bracelets.
Yep. Soon to be on the West End, no doubt.
Then he tries to know a runner with the money, because she was like, "No, that's it. I've had enough. I'm going now." So he tries to run off with all the money. She then stops him, but only takes her cut of the money.
She's a hero.
Not all of it, because she's a good girl like that.
She'll sell herself out to any shyster, but she's not taking that shyster's money.
Then goes to the hospital, where there's a nurse that's crying.
This was amazingly interesting to me, this page. Especially interesting. You know, when we said about what nuggets do we take away from this, this one really did. Because, again, this is something I didn't know. And I'm sure it's been retro done over years later. But, yeah, a really kind of quality page of Wonder Woman backstory.
Where she basically buys the nurse's name and identity, because she's Diana Prince.
Yeah.
So she takes the name Diana Prince and is now a nurse. And the other
And it's a name that's, as I say, I mean, I'm sure the origin's probably been tweaked on the way, but a name that perpetuates to this day. She is,
Yeah.
her civilian identity is Diana Prince.
And then
Bought off a desperate lady who, her peril is that her fella had moved to South America and couldn't afford to bring her
get
over.
her over there.
Yeah, so Wonder Woman slips her some cash so that she can pretend to be a nurse to be able to get closer to Steve Trevor. Sounds a little bit stalkery, doesn't it?
It does. And in that amazing way of if you just tie your hair up, you're a completely different person.
And put glasses on as well, because that's one thing that happens, doesn't it? While she's crying, Wonder Woman takes her glasses off and kind of goes, "We look really similar without glasses."
Yeah. So she then goes in and nurses up Steve.
Yes.
He then gets better, goes off to war.
Miraculous recovery, one might say. Pretty much has one conversation with her and he's fine. But and again, I forgot to say this earlier. Fine from what he's suffering with, which is a brain concussion. How they say it, I don't know what other concussions there are. Or it's much worse than that foot concussion I had once. No, it's a brain concussion.
So he's then going off to save the world because there's some Nazis, which I thought this was a bit early for Nazis.
I'm trying to think. I think this was published in 1939, so we would have been
just at the beginning of
of
like Poland and stuff.
Yeah, they were probably how do you phrase this right? They were probably weren't perceived as quite so bad as ultimately they become perceived as, because they were just the guys on the other side at this stage, weren't they? But yeah, I mean, like, America hadn't got involved at all, so I don't know what Steve Trevor's up to here, but
we don't get a plane crash or a plane fight.
Yeah, and again, I mean, like, I felt like this was because the guy who, let's say, right and draws this had probably done war comics before, so I'm definitely getting a dogfight in the air in this.
Yeah, which Steve's plane gets hit, so she turns up in the invisible jet, hangs off the edge.
Yep.
Grabbing the.
And he's plummeting, isn't he? His parachute hasn't opened, but she's got enough time to climb down a rope ladder from her invisible jet to still catch him.
Grab him.
Yeah.
Oh, and set the robot pilot up.
Oh, yes, yeah.
She's doing that as well. And then the kamikaze pilot stops him by his parachute not coming out. He starts shooting at her. Paching, paching.
Yeah.
Right hook.
Yep.
And then carries him in.
Amazing scene that, wasn't it? She again climbs back down the rope ladder to give a right hook at the perfect time to knock him out, but doesn't let him fall to his death. Captures him. So, like, I guess a heroic side of her there.
Puts him in the plane.
Yeah.
And then he miraculously dies before he can give up the secret base location. But Diana foresaw all of this and knows exactly where the Nazis are, because Mummy Dear has told her.
Yep. No real context, just thrown in there, isn't it? Like, it's like, here's this piece of information that I've been sitting on. Let's go.
So they then turn up to the Nazi base. There is poison gas. They have gas masks on.
It's strange as well, isn't it?
Gas.
Because I think if you thought about this now, again, go back to, like, if this was Wonder Woman's origin story now, okay, there'd be a lot more to it. But even this kind of sequence, this would have been maybe the course of at least 2/3 of an issue. But no, this is over 2 pages, isn't it? Like, they just kind of get there, biff up some Nazis, put on some gas masks that they just happen to have handy because they know there's poison gas there, and then the poison gas comes out. But yes, told in a very rapid pace that we probably don't see these days.
And then the head Nazi flips a switch that then explodes the bunker. I would imagine that's what it's meant to be. She goes and saves Steve again because he's under some debris.
And I know we said this about Superman and maybe his not so nice side. But this is I think up until this point, like Wonder Woman's portrayed kind of good, but there is a bit here where and he's under debris, as you say, and she puts, "Are you hurt, Steve? Why didn't you jump like I did?" Because that's what you
Yeah.
need when you're buried under rubble and in pain. Why don't you just jump, you idiot?
Just jump.
Yeah.
But with her, it just seems like an innocence, though.
Oh
It
yeah,
does.
yeah, yeah.
It
She
does
does.
it.
Yeah.
But Superman comes across as a cunt.
Oh yeah. Superman would have
With
threatened to break your arm in that first issue, whilst saying,
Yeah.
"Why didn't you jump?" Yeah.
Whereas this is more of a sort of, well, why didn't you just jump?
Wide-eyed, confused kind of. Yeah. Why didn't you
Yeah.
jump? Yeah.
There's that, and then she takes him back to the hospital again.
Well, there's a horrific panel next because in this debris thing, he suffers a broken leg, and actually, like, it's a gross panel because they draw this leg mangled. This leg is absolutely wonky and mangled, and that's why, yes, he has to take him back to the hospital because yet again, not a brain concussion this time, but yes, he has a absolutely mangled right leg now.
So he looks like he'll be fine.
Yeah.
And at this point, Backer's nurse is trying to get the love of Steve.
Yeah.
But Steve portrays his love, or proclaims his love for Wonder Woman. And at that point, she mentions how happy her mum would be that she is on Earth finding love in America, but also is her own enemy in this love triangle.
Yeah. A love triangle themselves. And it is, I mean, like, again, you know, you go to the sensibilities of the time, and I was really intrigued to see what would happen with a female-led story. And there are parts of it where I think, God, like, they were actually trying to write strong, independent female characters to a degree back then. But it is parts like this where I go, oh, you know, it is still clunky, isn't it? Like, you know, her main desire here is the man. It's like I'm doing this to win the love of the man, and you know, at the end, like as I say, the payoff is, oh, will he love me? Oh no, he loves the other side of me. What will one do? And so that was a bit of a shame. But I will say, I think during the during the issue, I was actually quite pleased that it wasn't all that. You know, it wasn't all I dropped my handkerchief and all like look at me. And I think, you know, bits like that, and as much as I laughed about it, bits like that panel of the old ladies calling her a hussy, I thought that was actually there to kind of go, you know, the older generation will judge you, but you know, just be you and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it was actually a lot more forethought and a lot more forward thinking than I thought it could be when we started it. But yeah, with a men are great though, aren't they? Science kind of sensibility at the end.
This is the thing. The thing that this struggles with is obviously it's written by men.
Yeah, yeah.
And very obviously written by men of that time. But at least they're trying.
Yeah. I think that's spot on. I think that's what I would say. That's what it felt like to me of going, they're trying. They're probably tiptoeing into a world where they go, we still need to sell comics. So we can't go all the way, I guess, like push into the female side of the story, which this isn't. And, you know, like, again, like Steve Trevor, I mean, other than the bit where he kind of gets the gas mask out, for most of the issue, despite clearly being the hero in the American nationwide. I mean, there's a newspaper headline about him, isn't there? It's front page news that he's recovered. But she does all of the fighting. She does all of the good stuff, doesn't she? She does all the hero stuff. So it's not like, they let her do the heroic stuff. But to a degree, I guess it portrays that he still gets most of the credit because he is a man and men do things.
Manly men.
Men. And, you know, like, no offence to Steve Trevor, but from the comic book page portrayal, not a hunk in my book. You know, like, yes, he's got blonde flowing locks, but the panel where I said his leg gets mangled, it doesn't look that much different than how they draw him for most of the issue anyway. He's kind of weirdly bodied. I think
Yeah.
more effort was put on the drawing of Wonder Woman than it was Steve Trevor, let's say.
Yeah. So the art on this one, I mean, this one looks stunning for what they were doing at that time. Especially the bits with her looking around doing the shopping.
Yeah.
That whole section, I mean, looked fucking wonderful. The invisible jet looked great. The one bit that I think looked a bit rough was the war bit when they were in the Nazi thing.
Yeah.
But then that again, looking at other stuff around that time, that's what all war comics
Yes.
and
Yeah.
the action stuff looked like.
Well,
So
and
it
bearing
is
in mind,
fitting
most of them
some-
probably had transitioned from that, hadn't they? Like they've
Yeah.
probably been producing them and went, "Oh, we want to do some different stories." But that was kind of the art style that they were used to seeing and aping, I guess.
But
I'm with you though. I thought the art was really strong, and when I say really strong, again, comparatively strong. Siegel and Schuster for the creation of Superman, legendary status because they created a legendary figure. But I would say from an art perspective alone, I think this is much stronger than the debut of Superman. I think this is. You're right. It is of a time, but it's of the time, and it feels like it's drawn of the time. So the way that Wonder Woman looks, the way that kind of her features are drawn, albeit simplistic, probably, but yeah, it looked good for me. I wasn't balking at too many panels. I think one of the things that was slightly probably too basic, which might have pulled me out a little bit, is anyone who was evil, stroke going to be evil. They had evil faces, didn't they? Like they had very kind of exaggerated mouths and things like that. I think to give you those visual cues of watch out for this one is a bad one. But yeah, I was actually pleasantly surprised and very impressed with the art on this.
Yeah, with it, I would be more inclined to read more of these than I was of Superman.
That's the thing. I'm quite gutted. I wish that this was the one that was a trade more than
Yeah.
Superman was, because I would like to see what happens next. And to be honest, I mean, with things like the Invisible Jet, and of course, like setting up the Nazis as the enemies, I do imagine for a long period of time, it's a lot of Steve Trevor going to fight Nazis and she fights them with it, rather than what we were seeing in Superman, more like the kind of common thugs.
Yeah,
But I felt like this one would get more hero-y quicker. That like she had kind of that a bit more of a yes, get behind her as she beats up the Nazi bad guy.
Seriously, I think with this, if you were to look at the Marvel equivalent, I mean, they were probably using Wonder Woman in the same way that they were using Cap.
Yeah.
So there, I would imagine that somewhere along the line there is an issue where Wonder Woman's, bopping Hitler on the nose.
Yes, yeah. Or like burning down the cinema with him in Inglourious Basterds style.
Yes.
I do think as well with this is but the way that they kind of do the origin, let's say, or the way how they throw us into here she is, this is the shit she can do, go. I am intrigued to see when they revisit that. Like at what stage in publication is it, like 4 years down the line or 15 years down the line, that they start to get into that kind of Amazon mythology a little bit more, or for a long time do we just get Hitler stuff? But yeah, I don't know. I will definitely keep this on the radar to see if there's any more. Again, I probably wouldn't go out and spend cash money on it. It wasn't that intriguing, and there are other Wonder Woman stories that are written later that I haven't read that I would be more inclined probably to spend my cash on. But there was enough here in this one to go. If a trade paperback or like a 5-6 issue collection of this come out, I would seek it out and I would read more if it's on freebies. And one of the things that that weirdly really struck out to me is, you said about the bit where she goes to the clothes stores and stuff like that. I hate Wonder Woman 1984. I
I've
really
not
liked
seen it.
one. I really liked Wonder Woman, and
Yes.
like whatever people's thoughts and feelings are on Patty Jenkins, the writer and director. I think with Wonder Woman, she made a really good movie. I felt like when she made Wonder Woman 1984, she did the opposite. She made a really bad movie. But one of the bits that's in Wonder Woman 1984 is, and it's a bit more Steve Trevor centric, but there is a bit around kind of looking at closed doors and things like that. And I did think it was really out of place. But actually, when I read this, it made me think, oh, I reckon Patty Jenkins read the first issue of this and went, I want to give a nod. Because, then they have it's in a shopping mall because it's in the 80s, but she has a fight with some armed robbers and things like that. And I've got a newfound, I still hate the movie, it's still rubbish, but I've got a newfound respect for kind of that bit of the movie because I think she draws that from this Sensation Comics number
Yeah.
one. So well done, Patty, for actually caring about the source material, but bad Patty for making a really rubbish follow up to what had been a good movie.
Yeah. So we go into the one I know I've been waiting for.
I think this was the one we were always going to save till last, wasn't it? Because the character that
Yeah.
we are most invested in is probably the one that maybe we've heard most about or seen the panels, or certainly it's the one that if you're ever like looking for a comic book story, you'll often hear about like a detective comics being found in someone's attic and things like this. But yeah, I'd never actually read it. I never knew what happened in this. And as I say, I think it's worth for context saying we get for free the Batman story, and I do think in that issue of Detective Comics there were other stories that weren't Batman, but this is Batman being introduced into it as a strip, ostensibly, I guess.
Yeah. And it starts with Bruce Wayne, Commissioner Gordon, smoking pipes.
Yes, thank God you noticed that as well. I wrote that down. I went pipes, pipes.
I was
That's
waiting
what
to see
people
if there was
did.
cognac. I was waiting to see if there was like a cognac in the hand with their pipe, but
Yeah.
no.
Just sitting around, having a pipe, having a chat.
And Gordon gets called off for some police work, and Bruce asks if he can come along.
Yep.
As you do.
Not a trained policeman or involved with the police at all. Just a fellow I smoke a pipe with. Gets taken to the crime scene though.
Yeah, so they turn up and it is a mob hit. A guy's been killed. His son's there. There's a knife. They believe it's the son that killed him. But then the son goes, well, no, I wasn't here. I've seen this story.
I was off smoking a pipe with someone.
I wasn't here.
Couldn't
I was
possibly be me.
Yeah. And we then hear about a couple of people that had also been threatened, were linked to this gentleman. It was a 4-man cooperative that were running a chemical company.
Yep.
And Bruce relieves himself from the crime scene.
From crime solving with no reason to, nor smoking a pipe with someone. Yep.
And we then see our first image of the Batman.
Yes, and
it is
sorry,
the Bat-Man, as he is at that point.
Yep.
He beats up a couple of thugs, gets some paperwork from them that tells him about the plan and the hits. But he's too late to save the next guy. He's already been done in.
Yep.
So it's down to just these two. So he takes his chances. He knows where he's going to go. And he turns up at this guy's laboratory where he's about to gas, in a gas chamber, the last member of the Syndicate.
And I didn't stop for this bit, but I almost did because It's a gas chamber, and they lay this out quite heavily in the text. The man generally uses to gas guinea pigs.
Yep.
My missus loves a guinea pig. I didn't have the heart to tell her that someone back in the day used to gas guinea pigs for a laugh. Probably because they do chemical testing on them. But
Yeah.
yes, it was a big gas chamber for guinea pigs, wasn't it? You know, it was a gas chamber that you could fit a human in. So God knows how many bloody guinea pigs he was ramming into there.
And then goes, but now you're going to be my guinea pig. As he's about to gas this other guy.
It was almost Schwarzenegger, Batman and Robin level of now you will be my guinea pig.
But Batman saves him, breaks out of said gas chamber with the fellow.
Did you not find that bit a bit weird? Like, so for context, for those who haven't read it, so the gas chamber is lowering. Batman's kind of running towards it, gets in under it, blocks the bit where the gas would come in with a handkerchief. Like, this is before many Bat gadgets. And then smashes his way out using a wrench. I don't know where he got the wrench from. Whereas I did look at that and go, why didn't he just, like, slide the guy out rather than get them both trapped into it and use his handy handkerchief to stop it? But yes, just a weird moment for me in the story.
The Batkerchief.
Yeah. That needs a return. That'll be in the Pattinson one. He'll take someone out with his Batkerchief.
Has the gas chamber. He then takes down the other killer, the scientist. Gordon comes and arrests them, and then he's back at home, and we get a lovely bit where he just looks like he goes into some little sort of digs, a little door as Bruce, and then comes out as the Bat.
As the Bat, yeah. And you know, just to add, there is another pipe smoking scene in between there as well. Don't know whether they're sponsored by Big Tobacco at the time, but certainly you get a lot of pipes and cigarettes in this. I mean, like there's a few bits kind of in that middle bit where like your intro to Batman, but there's some stuff around there of kind of Gordon. Like, it's not portrayed that they are a fan of the Bat, nor are they absolutely opposite the Bat at the moment, are they? It seems like there's a kind of a, who is this guy? Is he good or is he bad? Rather than them having made a decision. So yeah, he's not. You know, there's no Bat signal at this point, and there's no working with Commissioner Gordon. I think at certain points they even intimate that at one of the crime scenes, because the Bat has been seen, they're not sure whether the Bat might be involved in it in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. This may surprise you.
Yes.
I didn't like this.
I wondered when I was reading it, because it is very far devolved from what we see in modern Batman, but also, let's be honest, our love of Batman 66, you know, it's not the camp Caped Crusader version that we see there. And if anything,
it's just... I can imagine it, obviously, it being Detective Comics, that a lot of things... I said I've never read any other part of a Detective's Comics that isn't a Batman.
No, and do you know what? I couldn't tell you what any other parts ever are. It's the only thing I've heard of from Detective Comics, but I'm sure there are other good stories in it somewhere along the line.
But I'm going to imagine a lot of it would have been like this sort of a crime story sort of thing. So it's, you know, he's not the Bat. He's not the super detective. He you know, we have, he beats some people up, and he spoils the gas chamber. But other than that, there's not superhero-y Batman.
No,
in there.
And this is short as well, isn't there? So I don't think there's even a lot of room for much more than that, is there?
I was going to say it's 6 pages.
Yeah, 6 or 8, I think, one or two. But yeah, like very, very kind of a short story.
But yeah, it didn't make me want to read more of this era.
Now, I'm actually slightly different to you on that. I think this is the simplest of them, but only by the regards of, I think, the limited panels and pages they had to work with.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you get dropped into it, it's the Batman, and here I've got it here, the case of the chemical syndicate, and like the only thing you get that even remotely kind of touches on a wide or bigger story for him is there's a smaller blurb than you get in Sensation Comics, which pretty much says, here, there's a mysterious Batman who kind of fights crime and is on the side of good and righteousness. Go.
Yeah.
But I quite liked, weirdly enough, the thing that would. I was trying to put myself in the head of going, would I come back for more? And do you know what? As much as we know, and even looking at this with a modern eye on it, you can go, they didn't really sort of cover it up too much. But I quite liked that they ended it with that reveal of kind of Bruce going into a room and coming out as Batman. I think that would have made me kind of go, oh yeah, I want to see more of Batman. I want to see more of Bruce. I want to find out more. Also, I do wonder whether my predilection towards smoking also helped me want to read more, because I don't think there's two panels that go by without someone having a ciggy on it. But yeah, your villains are very kind of, well, they are either generic thugs of the time, similar to the ones we see in Superman, I guess,
Yeah.
or bad business owners. But yeah, there's nothing here that says this is a big story. I feel like reading this is that I would come back and the next issue I would get Batman foiling another caper like this, where he might. The lean towards the detective side, I guess, was him figuring out what was going to happen based off of a really convenient piece of paper that lays out generally the plan. So I'm not sure how much detecting was required to do that, but I think I'd be happy to read more of them. I think I actually would kind of go, oh, do you know what? Yeah, I'd like it to be 12 or 15 pages next time, so we get a bit more. Maybe the crime is a little bit more convoluted and stuff like that. But no, I quite liked it. I think this is the one I liked the most, and I don't think it's because it's Batman. I think that this one actually was the most intriguing for me because it gave very little away. Like, all you know about this is that Bruce Wayne smokes a pipe and hangs around with Commissioner Gordon. All you know about Batman is Batman's got a costume and he's fighting crime. And I think it kind of hooked me a little bit to go and kind of go, I want to know more about the Bruce persona, and I want to know more about why Batman does what he does and things like that. But as I say, it's really hard to divorce myself from I know that there's a really interesting story that's told many years later, probably. But yeah, I quite liked it. And yes, I would pick up more, and I may well pick up more if I'm honest. This one I might actually put my hand in my pocket to pick up some more issues. When I say that, digitally, I'm not going to go and put my hand in my pocket, remortgage my house, and try and buy the originals of these.
But yeah, no, it just didn't get me. Which is, I think that was the one that I was surprised about. I was expecting to be like, yay! But I mean, because I think the problem is because we now have such a pantheon of fucking amazing villains.
Yeah.
That a stupid crime syndicate that are murdering each other just because they want to get a bigger cut for themselves.
Yeah, he couldn't. That was the thing, wasn't it? He couldn't afford to buy the others out, but wanted to own the whole business. So he just went, "Well, I'll kill the others then, and I'll own the whole business." Yeah, it is kind of a stretch, I guess, as an idea. There's probably other ways to do that.
But yeah, no.
What did you think of the art of it? I mean, bearing in mind this is Batman's introduction to the world. What did you think of how Batman looked, and then generally the art style of the whole issue?
I like the early Batman design. I mean, that one looked good quite early out, and to be fair, it didn't change a lot until like the 50s, 60s sort of.
It feels like they just refine the look, don't they?
Yeah.
Probably like artists who have a bit more time and inclination, just kind of embellish a bit more on it, so you are more seeing like the definition of him within the suit, and maybe sort of slightly changing the way the cape looks, so probably more naturally how a cape would look, rather than here would have gone with a bat-like way. But you think,
Wide.
how would it actually sustain like that unless you've got some sort of roddage going on down the back? But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm with you. I like it, and as a Wonder Woman and Superman, I mean, I guess we'll touch on that here. This Superman, like the costume doesn't change tons from then to now. Wonder Woman, same, and Batman for large parts. So there really is something in that, isn't there, of the credit of the original designs of these characters, that they sustain that look for so long, and those looks become
Yeah.
iconic. So I think really good from that side of it. But yeah, Batman was probably the strongest. As much as I said I really liked the art on Wonder Woman, this probably had the strongest art for me.
So this one was the most consistent all the way through.
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas with Superman, he has his moments where he's the only thing on the page or something like that and looks good. Wonder Woman, majority was good, but obviously the Warry bits were a bit there. But with this, visually, was consistently good.
yeah.
But yeah, it was just the story didn't grab me.
Well, and like while we're kind of on the visually good, one of the things that I think is quite noticeable in all of these, and I wasn't noticing it at the time. It was only what kind of when I stopped, and after I'd read it, I kind of then went back and had a look at some of the panels and things like that. Is they didn't draw many backgrounds back then, did they? There's lots of
No.
panels where the background is just white or orange or blue, and there was only ever really a background if there needed to be one. So if they were about to crash for a table, you would see that table, the panel before, that sort of thing. But generally, it is the characters are drawn and not much else around it.
The thing is that you got to remember, probably the printing techniques
Oh
in
God,
those
yeah, yeah,
days
oh
would
yeah,
have made it nigh on impossible to go into too much of a detail
yeah. Not as
anyway.
I say that not as a criticism, more as an
Yeah.
observation. Kind of going again, the things that we see today, like you know, I think
Look at the
a
stuff we
min,
talked about, like Civil War.
yeah.
Some of the visuals in that, and then you know, 80 years later, you can do that because you've got
Well,
the level of printing and
you might now, if someone did a storytelling like this, you would potentially pat them on the back for going, "What a brave move to do minimalist stuff in the background because the stuff in the foreground was so good." I mean, we talked about it a bit in when we talked about Hawkeye. But yes,
yeah,
back then it was like, well, we do this shit because we can't afford the ink that it would take to print this stuff. So,
yeah.
so you're going to get the dude standing at the front and like it. That's what you're getting. But yeah, I don't know. I think one of the things that I was quite, unfortunately, I think I was always going to somewhat lean on being more interested in Batman. But you sort of said about like the rogues gallery that we get to see in the same way as Wonder Woman grabbed me because she feels like the most traditional hero-y thing that we see now, but leaning into the Nazis being the villain, which is a great villain to have.
Yeah.
This is the one where I was probably most interested to see how those villains appear at some point. Like I would like to see the early stages, the birth of some of these villains in this universe, because if treated like this, I imagine it is kind of very offhand, villain of the week style. But these villains of the week ultimately becoming the great characters we know now. One thing I meant to say when we were kind of doing a bit of the story synopsis is how unbothered Batman was when the bad guy falls into acid. Pretty much,
Yeah.
fuck it. Shouldn't have been a bad guy, should he? Which
Whoopsie.
was probably, and I know he didn't kill, because we often talk about like that's the big tenet of Batman,
Yeah.
he doesn't kill, but I generally expect him to be more bothered about it than he was here. So obviously that's something that like really does change
Or
as a character.
or is that the birth of the Joker?
Well, I did think, like when people later on do stuff like that, I do wonder. You know, I said about like suddenly giving Patty Jenkins credit for a scene in Wonder Woman 1984. I wonder whether when people like were looking at the Joker and doing stuff with the Joker, whether they not I'm not saying this guy's a Joker, he isn't, but they kind of go, oh, that happened in Batman, in Detective Comics 27, so let's lean that into the origins of people and things like that. But and what's it? So the last, you say, the last panel's him coming out of it, but then you've got the watch for a new thrilling Batman story next month. I think if it was me, then I'd have wanted to read next month's. I really do think I would have.
See, I probably would have at the time, not knowing what we now have.
Yeah.
But in 2022 eyes, looking back at it, I think it's a struggle.
Yeah, and as I say, maybe that intrigue comes for me from knowing what there is to come, and I think there's an interest in kind of going, how long does it take us to get there? Although I'm not planning on reading 80 years worth of published history, I haven't got that much time on my hands nor that money. But so is there let's rank them. Like if we had to go in an order of quality, pleasure, whatever, but how would you kind of rank them as a top 3?
I would put Superman at the bottom, then Batman, then Wonder Woman.
And do you know what? I'm with you on Superman at the bottom. It's the one that I enjoyed the least, and I think it's the one, even though there's DNA there of what we know to come, but I think he's the one that is most dramatically different as a human being, as a Kryptonian, as a character than what happens later. And I think it's the one that is most divorced from things that I associate with him. And I'm not saying that there isn't stuff in there, but yes, certainly that's the one I enjoyed the least, except for I think some of my enjoyment for it come from, oh, look how weird this is. This is 1930s stroke 40s stuff, isn't it? With the lynching and things like that.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I don't know between Detective. Do you know what? I think the honest truth is that I think I enjoyed Wonder Woman the most. So that would put Batman in second. But if I was ranking it on my intrigue to go on and read more, Batman would jump ahead of Wonder Woman in that regard. But yeah, man, the world's changed a lot, isn't it? Like, and not only has the world changed, but like how comics are put together are changed. And of course, same that we see with movies and TV and things like that, and probably like it's same novels and prose and things like that. But it's other than the iconic looks, as we say, because we know that these characters look very similar, certainly at least for 50 years, and some still to this day. I'm not entirely sure whether I can equate the success that come from it from these origins, if that makes sense. Like was it just a starvation of anything else, or they just stood out because of their visual look? But I didn't feel like in any three of them why they become a holy trinity of comic book characters. There wasn't enough there for me, probably in any of them, for me to go, yeah, I can see why these are still popular 80 years later.
I mean, the way that we realised that would have been reading what else is there at the time.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, as we said, at the time, there were lots of war comics.
Yeah.
There was your pulp stuff, so like your crime noirs and the romantic comics. It was some of the monstery stuff as well.
Yeah.
At that sort of time. So these would have stood out against all of that.
Yeah, and looking at the covers, they would have stood out, wouldn't they? We look and on Superman, obviously with the costume, you've got the blue, the yellow, the red stands out. Wonder Woman, red, yellow, blue stands out. Batman or for Detective, obviously the darker character, but you look at the cover of it, it's yellow, red, like he's the stark contrast to everything else that's going on. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I think they'd stand out on a shelf, and probably, as you say, stand out in comparison to what other stuff is out there. But interestingly enough, again, maybe why I liked Sensation and Detective a little bit more is Detective leans into the crime stuff. So I think it has an inbuilt audience at the time. People who like crime stuff anyway, and Sensation. I think there are leans into war and romance, whereas Superman probably only leans into petty thuggery in that one. Because I doubt there's a big kind of journey. But I mean, maybe as things go on, you see a little bit more of that kind of investigative journalist side. But yeah, the other two, I can see how they are more suited to genres that probably people are reading at the time. So you've got that pull. You pull an audience into superheroes by that crossover with stuff that's already out there.
Yeah. We will have to attempt to do this, but with Marvel at some point, if we can find a way of getting some early Marvel stuff.
I have, and again, it's on Kindle Unlimited at the moment, so it does have that, but for free. Although Kindle Unlimited isn't free, but I think you can get 2 months for free. They have Marvel Masterworks of Spider-Man, which has Amazing Fantasy, and I think the first 10 issues of Amazing Spider-Man. I think Fantastic. No, actually, I looked for Fantastic Four. I think they've got Thor, so I think they've got Thor's first kind of modern comics appearance in Journey into Mystery on there as well. And I've got a feeling they've got one other character kind of on there at the moment. But no, I'm with you. I'm quite interested because obviously those happen later, don't they?
Or
storytelling.
We can look at the Marvel app thing and see if they do a freebie trial.
Yeah, because I think
storytelling, they definitely have them on there.
Storytelling and art, I in my head has come on a long way by the time Marvel get into the game, but I don't think so far. I think we are still going to be looking at very simple stories, but I'd be very interested to see because a lot of them will be, and not all of them, but a lot of them will be Kirby and Lee, and to do that as a comparative point to say where did they start off from, and maybe where that grabbed the imagination. So yes, we will hunt out a way for us to get our grubby little mitts. And I think, I don't know about you, and it might depend on what there is, but I'd kind of like to lean into Fantastic Four, which was the start of Marvel, maybe Spidey, and I don't know, like X-Men's a bit later, but maybe if we can get our hands on a Thor or maybe an Iron Man, that might be quite interesting, and see whether we can do something along the lines of this.
Yes. But next week,
when we've been in a time machine, when we get in a time machine and get back to modern day,
when we get back to modern day, we will have another episode.
I'm planning on picking up some sort of sports almanac from the future if we go past modern day. So when you next see us, we might be very affluent because we've made our money from gambling. But when the fun stops, stop. I believe the advert says. But
yes.
If I've got an almanac, the fun ain't ever stopping.
We get us on that, and then we don't have to work.
Oh, brilliant, wouldn't it? You think how many comics could we read a day? We'd be pumping out a show a day at that rate, I imagine.
Be all over it.
Yeah.
But as I said, I don't know what we're doing next week because we haven't decided yet.
But
we'll wing it.
Follow us on the Twitter, which I'll put something up now to say what our Twitter is. But because I think we'll start to, if we don't cover it on the show, we'll start to tease stuff about what might be coming up on upcoming shows, and hopefully get a bit of feedback from you guys like we did for the top 5, so that we can integrate that into the show. So yes, if you get to the Sunday that this releases, whatever Sunday that is, we will put out what our next show will be around that time. So drop us any comments you want on there, and of course drop us comments on this video. And if you found a time machine and went back to the 1930s as well, please tell us what you thought of these issues, and please tell us if you were smart enough to bring some of them back to the future to sell, but we weren't.
just thought we'd get them on electronic devices. I just
Yes,
scanned
yeah.
one and
Yeah,
thought
we
that
would
was
do
going to be the way forward.
because we were so fucking tight. We even wanted a free. We read it on the newsstands back then. We didn't even want to put our hands in our pockets back then.
No, the 10 cents.
Yeah.
That's got to be like one of the best 10 cents ever spent, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you've still got one of them bad boys.
And I think all of them were. I can see it here that like Superman and Detective were, and I think Sensation was as well. But yeah, if someone invent a time machine, go back and do that. Buy a load of copies of them. We will live on an island made off of our time machine money.
So until next week, as always, like, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the YouTubey stuff. Follow the channel. Fridays, the main event, the Super Show, the Renaissance Men, all sorts of wonders, films, games, you name it, we cover it. TV,
news, entertainment news, yeah, everything. A plethora.
We also have Zed doing his TEW staves.
I'm a wrestler. I'm Paul Heyman, baby.
Being the new Paul Heyman. Stu and Baby Stu doing Big Egg, Little Egg gaming sessions.
And depending on where they are, they're either still playing Horizon Forbidden West or Stu's got fecked off of it already and is back on Fortnite.
And also, should be by now, if the release dates were correct, and he's finally realised when Picard is coming out, Jimmy will have his Star Trek show up.
Which, again, if the release dates are right, it's something that I can't wait. He's one of the boys on the channel, and I'm sure he'll be nervy doing his first one. But I've got a secret kind of hankering. I've watched a bit of Star Trek in my time, but not tons of it. But the boy loves it, and who doesn't like listening to someone talk about something they love? So yes, if Picard really has released and Jimmy's done the podcast, then yeah, give his Star Trek. I don't think he's thought of a name of it yet either, but give his Star Trek vids a watch.
Exactly. And until next time, bye!
Thanks for watching, and just remember, you can join the Cult of Egg by liking and subscribing to this YouTube channel. We release regular content where we talk about all things geek, all things pop culture, and all things that we're interested in. You can also come along and join the discussion on Facebook groups and Renaissance Cast. And you can join us on our Twitch channel where Stu regularly streams games. And if you'd like to support us, then please follow the link for the Patreon. Thanks very much.